Grouse Lake sits quiet and forgotten in Yosemite's high country until the Wails begin. In 1867, Ranger Galen Clark heard what he thought was a lost dog. Locals told him the truth. A drowned boy haunts the lake, calling out to anyone who dares draw near. Now, over a century later, a local father returns to Grouse Lake with his wife and children, dismissing the tale as mere legend. But as his son begins to hear the voice, as his daughter sees something in the water, and as the forest itself seems to shift, he realizes the story was never folklore. It was a warning. Some cries are not meant to be answered, and some spirits are not meant to be left waiting. Welcome to Sunday Scares, where the shadows whisper and nightmares come to life. But did you know that 96% of you watching aren't subscribed? If you love chilling tales that keep you up at night, hit like to feed the darkness, and subscribe if you dare. Now turn off the lights, settle in, and let the horror begin. I've lived in Mariposa my whole life, 42 years and counting. Yosemite's more than a park to me. It's a neighbor, a backyard, a place I know like my own skin. My dad used to take me up to Grouse Lake in the summers. We'd fish, cook over the fire, and sometimes just sit in silence, letting the wind in the pines do the talking. He was the first to tell me the story. The ghost boy of Grouse Lake, he called it. It's just folklore, he'd say, sipping a lukewarm beer beside the fire. Started with Galen Clark, you know, Yosemite's first guardian. Said he heard crying near the lake back in 1867. Locals told him it wasn't a dog or a kid. It was the spirit of a boy who drowned. Lures people in, drowns them. I'd laughed then, 9 years old and full of disbelief. Ghost stories were for tourists. Campfire fuel, nothing more. Now I'm the dad, and it's my turn to pass on the stories. My wife Carly and I brought our 2 kids, Liam, 10, and Ellie, 7, up for a weekend under the stars. Carly had never been to Grouse Lake, but she'd heard me talk about it enough to want to see it for herself. She thought it would be nostalgic. "Didn't you and your dad used to camp near here?" she asked, as we pitched the tent. I thought it'd be special. It should have been. We set up near the edge of the woods, where the trail breaks off toward the lake about half a mile up. No one else around, which wasn't surprising this time of year. Mid-October, just before the winter chills locked down the higher elevations. Trees were already shedding, and the air had that crisp snap that hinted at frost come morning. The lake, we figured, could be our little day hike for Saturday. Tonight was just about settling in, tent, fire, marshmallows, and the usual wrangling of kids more excited about glow sticks than nature. As the sun dipped behind the granite ridges, a hush settled over the forest. It wasn't ominous, not yet, just the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own heartbeat. The sky turned purple, then navy, then black. The kids poked at the fire with sticks while Carly read ghost stories from a beat-up book she'd found at the Mariposa thrift store. We laughed at the cliches. The hitchhiking woman in white, the haunted hotel room, the whispering woods. The kids begged for a real ghost story. So I told them about Grouse Lake, about Galen Clark hearing the cries in 1867, about the Miwok warning him it wasn't an animal, but a drowned spirit, one that lured people in with cries that sounded just like a lost child. Liam pretended to be scared. Ellie snuggled closer to Carly. "Spooky, but not too spooky," Carly said with a smile. "Let's keep it fun." The wind picked up just then, as if the forest was listening. By the time we crawled into the tent, the temperature had dropped. Carly had bundled up the kids and stuffed hand warmers into their sleeping bags. I lay there staring up at the nylon ceiling, trying to push away the strange unease creeping in. It wasn't fear exactly, more like a pressure in the chest, a heaviness, Maybe it was being back here after all these years. Maybe it was telling that old story again, breathing life back into it. The night was quiet, eerily so. No frogs croaking, no owls calling. Even the breeze seemed to hold its breath. I was drifting towards sleep when I heard something. A whimper. It was faint, like a whisper caught in the pines. I froze, listening hard. Then it came again. A higher, keening cry that prickled every hair on my body. I sat up in the tent, heart hammering. Liam and Ellie were fast asleep. Carly stirred but didn't wake. I unzipped the flap and stepped out. The fire was just coals now, glowing faintly. The forest around us was still, the kind of stillness that doesn't feel natural. Then the cry came again, clearer this time, sounding closer to a child. "Help, please." It was a boy's voice. I grabbed the flashlight and shone it toward the trail. Nothing. Just trees, shadows, and the distant sound of the wind, or maybe something else, moving through them. It had to be a prank. Maybe a lost hiker messing around. But no one else had been around for miles. No other tents. No cars parked at the trailhead. We'd checked. I stood at the edge of the trail for a long minute, flashlight shaking slightly in my hand. Every instinct told me to go check. What if it was a child? What if someone was hurt? But another voice in my head, deeper, older, warned me to stay put. "It's not a dog, son. It sounds like one. Maybe a kid crying. But it isn't. It's the boy. He waits." That was what my father had told me when I was young. I hadn't believed him then. Now I wasn't so sure. I backed away from the trail slowly, never turning my back on it, and zipped the tent closed behind me. Carly mumbled something, half asleep, half curious. "What is it?" she asked. "Nothing," I lied. "Just heard something in the woods." She was asleep again in seconds. I lay there, wide-eyed, listening to the night stretch out around us. Every creak of a branch, every gust of wind scraping the tent made me flinch. And in the deep silence between the sounds, I kept expecting to hear it again. That voice, that cry. What scared me most wasn't just the sound itself. It was how real it had felt. How it made me want to go to it, to find the source, to help. And the most terrifying thing? A part of me, just a sliver, still wanted to. The next morning was quiet. Too quiet. I hadn't told Carly about the voice. Not yet. I figured I'd dreamt it or misheard something. Maybe a coyote had yipped just right. Maybe it was nothing. That's what I told myself, over and over, as I poured instant coffee into our enamel mugs and forced a smile while Liam and Ellie chatted about pancakes and pine cones. Carly looked refreshed, humming softly while rolling up sleeping bags. Like last night had never happened. Like the woods weren't holding their breath. By the time we'd eaten and packed our day bags, the sun had burned off most of the morning mist. We set off up the trail toward Grouse Lake. I carried a small backpack with snacks, water, a first aid kit, and my old pocket knife. Carly walked ahead with the kids, their laughter bouncing between the trees. Half a mile isn't far, but the climb has a way of creeping up on you. The trail narrows near the top, roots and rocks jutting out like bones. The pines thin, and the sky opens above a still basin framed by jagged granite. Then you see it, Grouse Lake. It was smaller than I remembered, or maybe it always felt bigger as a kid. The water shimmered a dull green blue, almost glassy, reflecting the sky with uncanny precision. No ripples, no breeze, no birds. I frowned and scanned the shoreline. No ducks, no geese, not even dragonflies buzzing across the surface. Ellie ran down to the edge, crouching to dip her fingers into the water. Liam followed, skipping a rock that bounced once, twice, then stopped abruptly, as if swallowed. Carly stood beside me and took a deep breath. "It's beautiful," she whispered. I nodded, but my stomach turned. It didn't feel beautiful. It felt wrong. We spread out a picnic blanket on a flat boulder nearby and sat down. I kept glancing toward the water, watching the kids. Every so often I thought I saw movement just beneath the surface. Quick flashes like fish, but too smooth, too dark. "So," Carly said, brushing hair from her face, "tell us more about the legend." She smiled, teasing, but her voice carried a tinge of curiosity that wasn't entirely playful. Liam perked up. "Yeah, you said someone died here." I sighed, resting my elbows on my knees. The story goes back to the 1800s. Galen Clark, he was one of the first guardians of Yosemite, was hiking near here when he heard crying. Thought it was a lost child or a dog. But when he asked local Miwok guides, they warned him. It wasn't human. It was the spirit of a boy who drowned in the lake. They said he lures people in and pulls them under. Ellie stopped playing with a twig and looked at me, wide-eyed. "Like a ghost?" "Something like that." Carly gave me a soft elbow in the side. "You're going to give them nightmares?" But her smile didn't reach her eyes. I noticed Liam had gone quiet, staring out over the lake's surface. His lips were slightly parted, his eyes unfocused. "Hey, bud," I said. "You all right?" He blinked and shook his head. "I thought I heard something." My throat went dry. "Heard what?" "I don't know, like someone whispering, maybe across the lake?" I stood up, heart thudding. The opposite shore was empty. Just rocks, trees, and shadows. Still no wind, still no birds. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on us. Ellie looked around nervously. "Can we go soon?" Carly nodded. "Yeah. I think we've had our fill of creepy lake stories for one day." We packed up quickly. I didn't mention that I'd heard it too, a faint voice, no louder than a breath. "Help me," it had said. We took the long trail back, sticking closer together this time. No one spoke much. The forest felt like it was listening again. When we got back to camp, I started gathering firewood while Carly and the kids retreated into the tent. I needed the distraction. My hands worked on autopilot, snapping branches, bundling kindling. I couldn't shake the image of Liam staring out over the water, transfixed. It wasn't just a story. Not anymore. That night the fire crackled bright, but it didn't feel warm. Shadows danced around us, stretching too far into the dark. Ellie clung to Carly's side while Liam picked at his food. I tried to act normal, asking about their favorite parts of the day, telling a dumb joke about raccoons with backpacks. But everyone felt it. The shift. The tension. Like the forest itself was leaning in. Around 9, the kids turned in. Carly lingered a while, staring at the flames, rubbing her hands together. "You didn't imagine it, did you?" she said softly. I looked at her. She wasn't smiling. "No," I admitted. "I heard it last night too. A voice. Sounded like a kid." She nodded slowly, her face pale in the firelight. "I dreamed about water, about someone pulling me down. I couldn't scream." We sat in silence for a long time. The woods around us felt alive, breathing, watching, waiting. Later, after Carly went to bed, I stayed up alone, staring at the glowing coals. That's when I heard it again, clearer this time. "Help me." Not from the woods, from the trail, from the lake. And worse, it sounded like Liam's voice. I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the roof of the tent, while my son's voice echoed in my head. It wasn't him, of course. He was right next to me, curled up in his sleeping bag, breathing softly. But the voice I'd heard outside, by the trail, it sounded exactly like Liam. The same tone, the same tremble he gets when he's scared. I didn't tell Carly. She'd had enough after the dream. I didn't need to add fuel to whatever was creeping into our minds. Still, I kept the flashlight beside me, my pocket knife gripped under the sleeping bag. Sometime around 3 a.m., I must have nodded off, but I jolted awake to a rustling sound. Not outside, inside the tent. I turned and saw Liam sitting up, eyes glassy, face pale. "Hey," I whispered, reaching out to him. "You okay?" He didn't answer, just kept looking at the tent wall like he could see through it. "Liam?" Finally he whispered, "He's calling me." A spike of cold shot through my chest. "What?" "The boy in the lake," he said, matter of fact, like it was the most normal thing in the world. "He said I can help him. He said I'm the only one who can." "Liam, that's just a dream," I said quickly. "There's no one in the lake." He turned toward me, and for a split second I thought I saw something off in his face. Like his expression didn't belong to him. Like he was wearing it. Then it was gone. He blinked and looked confused. "Dad?" I pulled him into my arms and held him there, listening for more sounds, half expecting to hear the zipper slide down on its own. But the tent stayed closed, and the woods stayed quiet, unnaturally quiet. By morning, Liam didn't remember any of it. Not the voice, not waking up, not speaking to me at all. He just yawned, stretched, and asked for cocoa. Carly was pale, but pretending. She smiled and moved through the morning routine, but I could see the tightness around her eyes. She'd heard something too. We all had. After breakfast, I suggested we pack up early. The kids whined, but not as much as I expected. Carly didn't argue. We were halfway through tearing down the tent when we realized Ellie was gone. She'd been gathering pine cones near the edge of the trail. But now, nothing. Just an empty space, a few scattered cones, and silence. We shouted her name, over and over. Carly ran in one direction. I ran in another. Liam close behind me. I pushed through brush, heart thudding so hard I could barely breathe. Then I heard it, giggling, high, childlike. It was coming from the direction of Grouse Lake. I tore down the trail, limbs burning, rocks sliding beneath my boots. Liam struggled to keep up, but I didn't slow down. And there she was, Ellie, standing at the lake's edge, toes inches from the water, staring at her reflection. Except, there was something wrong with the reflection. It was smiling, wide, stretched, and not smiling like Ellie does. Its eyes were too dark, its mouth too big. "Ellie!" I shouted. She didn't turn around. Her body wobbled slightly like she was about to step forward. I sprinted the last few yards and grabbed her just as her foot began to lift. She screamed, not like she was scared of the lake, but scared of me. "You're ruining it!" she shrieked, clawing at my arms. "He needs me. He said he needs me." Carly arrived moments later, breathless and crying. We carried Ellie back to camp, both of us shaking. She calmed down eventually, sobbing into Carly's chest while Liam sat silently, staring into the trees. We left within the hour. The hike back to the car felt longer. Every branch crack, every gust of wind sent my nerves screaming. Liam lagged behind, and I had to stop more than once to make sure he was still with us. At one point, he asked if we could go back to the lake, just for a minute. "No," I snapped. "We're done with the lake." He didn't argue. When we finally reached the car, I locked the doors before I even started the engine. We didn't talk much on the drive back down to Mariposa. Everyone stared out their windows like they were afraid to speak it aloud, as if talking about it would invite it back in. But I couldn't stop thinking about that reflection. I know what I saw. It wasn't Ellie. It looked like her, sure, but something was wrong beneath the surface. And what scares me most isn't that it tried to trick her. It's that it almost succeeded. That night, back home, I sat on the porch, long after everyone had gone to bed. I poured myself a whiskey, hands still shaking. and tried to find the words for what had happened. I thought about Galen Clark. How he must have felt when he heard those cries in the woods, not knowing what to believe. And I thought about the Miwok, and how they didn't hesitate. They knew, they warned him, and now I believe them. Whatever's in that lake, it's still there, and it's still hungry, and the worst part? I don't think it wanted Ellie. I think she was bait. It wants Liam. We were home. Safe. But the air in the house felt different now. Quieter. Like the silence had followed us. Carly tried to bring normal back. School runs, packed lunches, movie nights. But the kids weren't the same. Ellie didn't speak much. She'd sit in her room and draw for hours, pages of water, blue scribbles, dark shapes underneath. And Liam. He barely slept. He'd wake up drenched in sweat, whispering things I couldn't quite hear. Once I stood outside his room at 2 a.m. and heard him mumbling. He's still calling. Still there. Still waiting. I opened the door. He was asleep, eyes shut, lips moving. I sat with him until sunrise. That's when I decided. I had to go back. It made no sense. Every instinct screamed to stay away. But the boy in the lake wasn't finished. Not with me. Not with Liam. I felt it in my bones. Something had latched onto us out there, and it wasn't going to let go. Carly begged me not to. You're not thinking straight, she said. You want to walk into that again? Why? What good could come of it? I didn't have an answer that made sense to her. Only one that made sense to me. If I didn't face it, it would come for my son. I left early the next morning. I didn't bring much, just a pack, a flashlight, matches, and a small hand-carved bear my father had given me when I was a boy. He used to say it was protection. I wasn't sure I believed it now, but I held onto it like a lifeline. The hike was faster this time. My legs burned, lungs ached, but I didn't stop. When I reached Grouse Lake, the clouds were already curling over the peaks above. The sky had a leaden tint like bruised steel. The lake was still, utterly still. Not even the faintest ripple touched its surface. It looked like glass stretched across something alive. Watching. I stood at the shoreline, heart pounding. The forest was dead quiet behind me. I felt like I had stepped outside of time. I know you're here, I said aloud. No answer. I stepped closer to the edge. The water shimmered, a glint of movement beneath, a flicker, like a hand. Then I heard it, faint, barely audible. Help. The voice of a boy, just like before. But this time it wasn't pleading. It was angry. Why didn't you come? I turned, expecting someone behind me, but I was alone. The water rippled, and then I saw him. He stood on the opposite shore, barefoot, pale, wearing what looked like a soaked, threadbare shirt and trousers that clung to thin limbs. His hair was black and stringy, water dripping from the ends, even though he stood in the open. His face was wrong, too symmetrical, like a doll carved from wax. His eyes were the worst part, glassy, dark, and flat. He didn't blink. You left me, he said, though his lips barely moved. His voice came from everywhere. I didn't. I stopped myself. I'm here now. What do you want? He tilted his head, slow and mechanical. You brought him to me. My blood turned to ice. No, I said. You stay away from my son. The boy stepped forward, onto the water, not into it. Onto it. Like it was solid beneath him, like he was part of it. I backed up a step, hands trembling. You can't protect him, he said. You think this ends here? It doesn't. He hears me now. He knows me. Why? I shouted. Why him? The boy stopped walking. He looked down at the lake. I was alone, cold. I waited and waited. No one came. Not even my mother. He looked back at me. He reminds me of me. I didn't know what to say to that. So I did the only thing I could. I took the carved bear from my pocket and stepped forward. "He's not yours," I said, voice shaking. "Take me instead." The boy's eyes narrowed. "I'm sorry for what happened to you, but you don't get to take him. You don't get to become him." For a moment the boy flickered, like a bad signal on an old TV. Then his expression twisted, rage distorting his too perfect face. "You left me!" he shrieked, and the lake exploded. Water shot upward in a geyser. The wind screamed through the trees. A wall of freezing air slammed into me, knocking me backward into the rocks. I hit hard, gasping for breath. From beneath the surface, hands reached up. Pale, bloated, dozens of them clawing toward the shore. I threw the carved bear into the center of the lake. As it struck the water, everything stopped. The wind died, the water stilled, and the boy was gone. The lake looked normal again, silent, eerie, but no longer seething with malice. I didn't wait. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached the car. Back home, the silence in the house lifted. Ellie started drawing people again, smiling ones, trees, dogs. Liam laughed more, slept better. Whatever had attached to us, whatever he was, it was gone. Mostly. Sometimes, I still hear water dripping when there's no leak. Sometimes Liam stares out the window for a few seconds too long. And once, just once, he asked me, "Dad, do you think he'll ever find someone else?" I didn't answer, but I looked up Grouse Lake that night. They don't put the story in the guidebooks, but it's still out there, buried in ranger reports, whispered in local bars, painted in old stories passed down through the Miwok. A boy drowned in that lake a long time ago. No one ever found the body. And even now, when the wind is just right, hikers say they hear a child crying, calling, waiting. Yosemite National Park, Ranger's Log, entry 4577, filed October 14th, 2024. Assigned Ranger D. Alvarez. The call came in at 2:47 a.m. Dispatch said a father was reporting something strange, crying noises like a child in distress near Grouse Lake. He was camping with his family just off the trail and claimed the voice came from across the water. The man said his daughter nearly wandered into the lake at night. She was not herself, he said. Eyes glassed over like she was being pulled. He didn't stick around to file a full report. Didn't blame him. Grouse Lake has a reputation, even among us rangers. It's not in the official training manuals, of course. But stories float around, quiet, passed in the firelight at base camp, always ending with someone saying, "Don't go up there after dark." Still, stories aren't evidence, and I'm not one for superstition. So I volunteered to check it out. I started the hike before dawn. I've walked this trail a dozen times. It's short but steep, winding through pine and cedar up to a basin that holds the lake like a secret. Most visitors skip it, favoring easier loops with grander views. Grouse Lake is small, tucked away, and never quite still. There's always a ripple even when there's no wind. Always a hush even when birds are calling. As I reached the ridgeline, the sun was just beginning to bleed through the treetops. Golden light spilled over the granite, turning the forest floor into a checkerboard of shadow and warmth. But when I reached the lake, the temperature dropped, noticeably. I stopped, catching my breath, scanning the shoreline. No tents, no people, just the lake, calm, too calm. The surface reflected the trees perfectly, like a sheet of glass laid over something dead. I logged the coordinates and pulled out my phone. No signal. Expected. I circled the lake slowly, checking for signs of disturbance. footprints, ash piles, trash. Found one trampled area near the water's edge, small boot prints, a child's. Drag marks, toes pointed toward the water, no blood, no signs of struggle, just a sense of something unfinished. I crouched and took a few photos. When I stood, I swear I heard something, a soft whimper just over my shoulder. I spun around. Nothing, no wind, no birds, just the lake and me. I decided to camp overnight. Not standard protocol, but I needed more than breadcrumbs to write up a report. So I set up camp just west of the lake, on higher ground, and kept my radio on channel 1 in case dispatch tried to reach me. Sunset came fast. The shadows lengthened, and the forest fell silent in that strange way it does when it's listening. I cooked dinner by the fire and tried not to think about the drag marks, or the whimper, or Galen Clark. The legend's been passed around since 1867. Clark heard crying near the lake and assumed it was a wounded animal. Locals told him it was something else. A drowned boy. A spirit. One who calls out in a child's voice, luring the living to the water's edge, to pull them under, to keep them. Even now, some native rangers won't patrol this trail after dusk. One guy, Toby, a veteran out of Wawona, said his grandfather warned him never to answer cries near water in the Sierra. If it sounds like a child, he told me, you run. 10:38 p.m. Temperature 42 degrees Fahrenheit. Moon waning crescent. Conditions calm. I was recording field notes when it started. The crying. It came from across the lake, soft at first, like someone far away calling out, "Help, help me!" I froze. Every instinct told me to respond. It sounded so real, like a child scared and hurt, barely able to speak. I grabbed my flashlight and scanned the opposite shoreline. Trees, brush, nothing else. Then I saw it. A shape just at the edge of the trees, small, standing still. "Ranger Alvarez!" I called out, identifying myself. "If you're in distress, stay where you are. I'm coming around." No response. I circled the lake with my light, boots crunching in the underbrush, hand on my sidearm. The beam flickered once, then again. When I reached the other side, nothing. No person, no prints, no sign of anything living having stood there at all. But the crying, it had moved. It was behind me now, back where I'd just come from, the same voice. "Please." The tone shifted, like it knew I was chasing it, like it was playing. I returned to camp and stayed up with the fire until my eyes couldn't fight anymore. The crying stopped around 1 a.m. I woke just before dawn to the sound of dripping. Not rain, steady, singular drops, like something wet moving through the forest. My gear was dry, the tent was dry, but I heard it drip, drip, drip. I stepped out into the cold. The lake was fogged over, a thick mist rolling low along the surface. And standing in the shallows, knee-deep, was a child. At least it looked like one. But even from here, I knew something was wrong. It was too still. Its limbs too long. The head tilted slightly to one side, like it was listening. I raised my radio and pressed the button. "This is Ranger Alvarez, reporting from Grouse Lake. I have a visual on a miner in the water. Possible medical emergency. Request backup and medevac. Over." Static. Then the figure turned its head. Slow, jerky. I stepped back. It raised its hand and pointed, not at me, at my camp, at my tent. I rushed back, tearing through the brush. Everything looked undisturbed, but when I opened the tent, my field notebook was soaked through, dripping wet like it had been submerged. I hadn't even left it outside. The next entry in the notebook wasn't mine. Just one line, written in childlike print across the damp page. You heard me. October 15th, Yosemite National Park. Ranger's log. Personal, not filed. I packed up camp as soon as the sun rose. The notebook was still wet, despite sitting by the fire for over an hour. The childlike scrawl, you heard me, bled into the paper like it had been written in lake water, not ink. I tried to write over it. The pen refused to work on that line. Only that line. My radio never came back online. Just static. I hiked down the mountain in half the time it took me to climb it. Something watched me the entire way. I felt it in my spine. Every turn in the trail felt wrong. Every branch crack sounded deliberate. I reached the station at Wawana before noon. I didn't log what happened, not fully. Just wrote it up as a false report, checked the area, and found no trace of campers. Technically not a lie. Still, I didn't sleep when I got home. Instead, I dug up everything I could about Grouse Lake. The first entry I found was Galen Clark's, the oldest written account. He called it a mournful cry, said it echoed through the trees and came from the water, but no animal or child was ever found. Miwok tribes warned him it was a spirit, a drowned boy who lured the living to the water. Some versions say the boy had fallen in while chasing a bird. Others claim he was dragged in, sacrificed, drowned to appease something older than him. And the stories didn't stop in 1867. I found ranger logs dating back to the 1950s, buried in archives, misfiled. One log from '58 described persistent reports of crying from Grouse Lake. A ranger named Holloway wrote, "Sounded like a child. I checked the shoreline, nothing there." But later I found wet footprints outside my tent, bare feet, small dot. In 1979, a volunteer worker went missing near the lake. The report said she was last seen walking alone along the water's edge. Her boots were found neatly placed on a rock, laces tied. No sign of her body. Another case in 1996, campers reported hearing a voice saying, "I'm cold, come help me." The man who filed the complaint said his daughter began talking to a boy no one could see. She stopped eating, refused to leave the tent. They left before sunrise. The ranger who investigated wrote simply, "Unsubstantiated." Then he transferred to the Mojave district. I even found a personal note tucked in a manila folder labeled "Non-Critical Folklore," scribbled in blue ink. "It's not a ghost. Ghosts don't hunt." That afternoon, I went to speak with Toby, the veteran Miwok ranger I mentioned in my last log. We met at a small diner outside Oakhurst. I didn't have to ask if he knew the story. "You went up there, didn't you?" he asked, before I'd even sat down. I nodded. "You hear it?" "Yeah." He rubbed his face. "You answered, didn't you?" I hesitated, then nodded again. "Shit," he muttered. "They always answer." I leaned forward. "You said your grandfather warned you about voices near water. What did he mean?" Toby didn't look up. "The boy's not the problem. The boy's bait." I blinked. "What?" "The thing that calls out, what you heard. It's using the boy's voice. Maybe his memory. But what's in that lake isn't him anymore. It's older. Hungry. It knows we fear for our children. That's how it pulls you in." "That little figure I saw in the water, not him," he interrupted. "Not really. That's just a mask. People think ghosts are echoes. Nah. This thing, it listens back. It knows you once heard it, and it won't forget you did." He looked me dead in the eyes. "It wants you now." I didn't go back to Grouse Lake that night, but I didn't go home either. I slept in the ranger substation outside Wawana. Left the radio on. I didn't trust my apartment, not with Liam, my 6-year-old nephew, staying with me while my sister was overseas, not with how he'd been sleep-talking lately. Around 2:30 a.m., static buzzed on the radio. I sat up. Then came a voice, faint, warped, childlike. Ranger. Alvarez. I stared at the unit. My hand hovered above the volume knob. The voice came again. Come back. Then silence. I returned to Grouse Lake the next morning. I didn't tell dispatch. I didn't fill out a trip log. I just left. Call it reckless. I call it finishing what I started. The lake was quiet when I arrived. No wind, no birds, no sound, until I set foot on the shoreline. Then, drip, 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 just like before. I looked out over the water and said clearly, I'm not here for games. At first, nothing. Then the mist rolled in again. Not like weather, like something breathing. A figure stepped out of the fog. Not on the water this time, from the water, climbing up through the shallows. The child again. Closer now. I stood my ground. Who are you? I asked. The boy tilted his head. Help me. His voice cracked, full of ache, fear, cold. Tell me your name, I said, more forceful. He blinked slowly. You know me. No, I said. You're not him. The smile dropped from his face, and then his voice changed. Deeper, hollow, number. But you will be. And with that, the child dropped into the lake like a puppet with its strings cut. The water exploded. Hands shot out, wet, pale, bloated fingers reaching for the shore. For me. I turned and ran, boots slipping on wet rock. The air behind me filled with a high, sharp scream, like metal on bone. I didn't stop running until I reached the ridge. When I looked back, the lake was flat again. Still. But this time I saw something floating in the center. My field notebook, dry, face up, pages fluttering in the wind. I'm writing this from the substation now. The radio's off. The door is locked. But I know it won't be enough. Because Toby was right. It listened. And now, it remembers me. Yosemite National Park. October 17th. Personal log. Unofficial entry. I've been off the roster for 48 hours now. Called in a stress leave, which wasn't technically a lie. But no leave form, no sick note, and no visit to HR. I just stopped checking in. Toby called me last night. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just said one thing. Don't go near water. Then he hung up. Simple, director, full of dread. But it's too late for that, because Grouse Lake isn't just Grouse Lake anymore. Last night, I heard dripping in my apartment, not from a tap, from inside the bedroom. Slow, heavy drops like water slipping from soaked fabric. I followed the sound. There was nothing there, except footprints, small, bare feet outlined in muddy water, from my bedroom window to the foot of my bed. Then gone. I tried rationalizing it. Maybe I tracked something in. Maybe my boots were wet and I stepped funny and didn't realize. But that doesn't explain the voice, or the dream, if it was a dream. I was standing at the lake again, same mist, same silence. But this time, I wasn't alone. All around the water's edge were others, dozens of them, shadowy figures, unmoving, facing the lake. None turned to look at me. I recognized one, Ranger Holloway, from the 1958 report. I'd seen his old staff photo in the archives, gray uniform, droopy eyes, pencil mustache. In the dream, he looked the same, except his eyes were black. wet, empty. I turned to run, but something grabbed my hand. A child's hand, small, cold. I looked down. The boy from the lake. "Stay," he whispered. When I woke up, I was holding the carved bear my father gave me when I was 10. It had been in storage for years, in a box. Until now. I drove to El Portal this morning and dug deeper into the ranger archives. There's a private drawer kept by some of the older guards. Stories not part of public logs. They're not exactly sanctioned, but they're kept. That means something. I found an audio cassette labeled GL, Holloway Interview /1971. The date was 15 years after his encounter. I borrowed an old player and popped it in. Static fuzzed, then a shaky voice came through. "Holloway, I heard it again last night. The crying, outside the window. I don't live near the lake anymore. I moved away years ago. Doesn't matter. It follows." Interviewer, unidentified. "You said it was a child. Have you seen it again?" Holloway, "Not the same. Not exactly. Sometimes it's the boy. Sometimes it's my sister, from when she drowned in 42. Sometimes it's me." Holloway, "It's not just about drowning. It wants grief. It wears your memory. That's how it finds a shape." The tape ended abruptly. No final note, no signature, just the sound of dripping. Real or recorded, I don't know anymore. I left the office shaking, drove back toward Wawana, but I didn't stop at my apartment. I went back to Grouse Lake, again. This time I didn't bring gear. No radio, no tent, no notebook, and only the bear. I reached the lake just as the sun began to set. The light through the pines looked molten, like the trees were bleeding gold. It should have been beautiful. It wasn't. The air had changed. Thicker. Each breath felt like inhaling memory. Old things. Forgotten things. The lake shimmered with its usual glassy surface. But beneath it, I saw motion. Not fish. Faces. Dozens of them. Pressed against the underside of the water like a sheet of ice. Blurred. Distorted. Some were calm. Some screamed. And one was me. I stumbled back, heart in my throat. The lake rippled, and the boy emerged again. Only now I saw him clearly for the first time. His clothes were ragged but not old-fashioned. His shirt had a faded Marvel logo. His shoes were torn sneakers, not from the 1800s. Not a ghost, someone recent, someone who never made it into the reports. He looked up at me. His eyes didn't shine. They absorbed the light. "I'm not the only one," he said. His voice was layered, like multiple voices speaking at once. Children, women, men, all stacked beneath his. They all heard, just like you. I gripped the bear tightly. "What do you want?" His head tilted. "You already know." Then the lake pulled him back under, along with all the faces. Gone. The surface stilled. I stood there until full dark. No wind, no stars, and then I saw them. Figures on the shoreline, all around the lake. Watching me, some were in ranger uniforms, some in hiking gear, one in a scout outfit, all of them silent, all of them soaking wet. They weren't threatening, they were trapped. I stepped forward barely a foot before I remembered Toby's warning. "Don't go near water." I stopped, turned, walked back. Didn't run, didn't look back. And when I got back to my car, the passenger seat was wet, drenched like someone had sat there, waiting. October 18th. I'm writing this because I need someone to know. Grouse Lake doesn't haunt people. It collects them. It remembers the ones who listen. And now that it knows I'm one of them, It's trying to find its shape in me. I've been hearing my father's voice. He died 6 years ago in Sacramento. But last night I heard him clear as day. "Danny, come down to the water. I need your help." He said it just like he did the day I broke my leg as a kid. The voice isn't random, it's personal. It knows what breaks us. Tomorrow I go back, one last time, to see if there's a way to break the cycle or to end it. If I don't come back, don't file a report. Don't send anyone up there. Burn the trail signs, mark it closed, seal it in silence. Because silence is the only thing it doesn't wear. Yet. October 19th, Yosemite National Park. Final entry, Ranger D. Alvarez, unfiled. If you're reading this, I either failed or I never came back. And if you're smart, you'll stop reading now. Burn this. Bury it. Get as far from Grouse Lake as you can. But if you're already hearing the voice, if it's calling you, then it's too late. So I might as well finish the story. The plan was simple. Confront it, expose it, and somehow resist it. But that was just a story I told myself, so I wouldn't feel like I was walking into my own grave. I hiked out before dawn, taking only what I needed. My flashlight, the carved bear, a voice recorder, and a sealed bottle of ash from a burned Miwok sage bundle Toby had given me. He said it might not stop the thing, but it might buy me time. The lake was dead still when I arrived. No birds, no wind, no sound. As always. I stepped to the water's edge and pressed record. This is Ranger Daniel Alvarez, October 19th. I am at Grouse Lake. If this tape is found, I want it to be known. This place is not safe. It is alive. The lake responded. A ripple, just one, rolled across the surface toward me, and then the boy appeared. Only this time he wasn't alone. A second figure stood beside him, taller, more human in shape, but indistinct. Its outline shimmered like it didn't belong in this world, like it was still deciding what shape to wear. Its eyes were just black voids. "Ranger," the boy said, "will you help us?" His voice was hollow, echoing with a deep undertone. The thing beside him turned its head slowly, like its neck was too tight, too stiff. "Don't listen," I said aloud, to myself maybe. "Don't believe." "You came back," the boy said. "That means you believe." I felt it then, deep in my chest, like a hook tugging at something old. A grief I hadn't felt since my dad passed. That voice I heard last night, calling me to the water, it wasn't an illusion. It was him, or something pretending to be him, and it knew just what to say. I pulled out the sage ash and threw it toward the water. A hiss erupted where it touched the lake's surface. The taller figure flinched, its form unraveling in the mist. The boy staggered back, blinking rapidly, almost confused, like part of him remembered something. "This isn't your place," I said, voice steady. "This was never your lake." For a moment, the mist thinned, and in that brief clarity, I saw the real boy. Soaked, shivering, lips blue. His eyes no longer black, just terrified. "Help me," he whispered. "I want to go home." But then the water screamed. Not the boy. The lake. Like it was wounded. Hands erupted from the surface again. White, bloated, clawing for anything warm. They grabbed at the boy, pulled him back into the depths, swallowed by the wailing surface. The tall figure reformed, no longer man-shaped, just a spire of water and shadow, twisting upward like a drowned soul trying to stand. It reached for me. I backed up, heart slamming in my ribs. But I didn't run. I pulled out the recorder and shouted into it, "The lake is a predator. It mimics grief. It wears it. It used the boy, and it'll use anyone who answers. The figure screamed, then burst into mist, into silence, into stillness. And just like that, it was gone. The water calmed, the air warmed, the sun broke through the clouds. The lake looked normal, but I didn't believe it. I left the carved bear on the shore, tucked in the crook of a rock, a kind of offering, maybe a thank you, maybe a goodbye. And then I walked back. I didn't look over my shoulder. October 20th, back in Wawona, I slept for 12 hours straight, the first real sleep in days. No dripping, no footsteps, no voices. Liam came by with my sister. He smiled, handed me a pine cone he found on a hike. Said it reminded him of you. My sister laughed. He hadn't talked about dreams. He hadn't whispered in his sleep. Not once since I came back. Maybe the lake let go. Or maybe it just went quiet, waiting. I filed a formal request today to have the Grouse Lake Trail restricted. The file includes a redacted version of this report. The rest I burned. Toby's helping push it through. He says if it works, he'll retire. Says he's done carrying that shadow. I don't blame him. I've started seeing things differently now. Places that feel off. Sounds that echo too long. Faces and reflections that blink when I don't. I know the signs. The lake isn't the only one, but it was the first. So here's the truth. There's something out there in Yosemite. Not a ghost, not a spirit. Something older, hungrier. It doesn't haunt you with fear. It haunts you with memory. It learns your pain. It becomes someone you miss. And then it calls and, "Help me, I'm cold. Please don't leave." And if you answer, that's when it opens its mouth and you step inside. Final recommendation, restrict trail access to Grouse Lake. Reassign all solo ranger patrols in the region. And above all, if you hear a child calling from the water, don't answer.